Installing a leash on a bodyboard is one of the simplest things you can do, and a lot of people think it's like rocket science, but it's very simple. I'm going to go through all the steps right now. Alright, first thing you need to know is if your board has a stringer in it or not. A stringer is a stiffening rod that's inserted into the bodyboard to make it stiff. Generally, boards with a single stringer will have the stringer right up the center, and some boards have two stringers, which are generally located about halfway between the center and the left side and the center and the right side of the board. So you need to make sure that you don't hit the stringer or stringers when you're installing a leash. Now this particular board is a single stringer board, so we don't want to install the leash in the center. We want to do it to the right or left of center. In this case, I'm going to install it to the right of center, and where you install the leash is entirely personal preference. I do recommend installing it anywhere between 6 and 8 inches down from the nose. You can guess on that, it doesn't have to be exact. But you don't want to install it too far down or you'll end up laying on it. And you don't want to install it too far up, or if the board gets under heavy stress, it can rip out of the board. So about 6 to 8 inches down. In this case, the easiest way to install a leash is either with a screwdriver, or, because we do a lot of leashes here, we use a drill. A screwdriver works just as good though, and I'm going to show you how that works right now. You simply pick the spot on the board where you want to install the leash, and in this case I wear the leash on my right bicep, so I'm going to install it on the right side. Another consideration is if you're going to drop knee, you have to keep in mind which foot goes up on the board. If it's your left foot, you're okay to install the leash on the right side. That way you won't step on the leash plug. Obviously, if your right foot goes up on the board, over here, you want to install the leash on the opposite side. So that's another thing to think about. So I'm going to install the leash on the right side. I've picked my spot. I just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. And all you do is you push the screwdriver through the board, and it'll stop when it hits the bottom skin. You can maybe barely see that poking through. You want to stop at that point, and then you use the palm of your hand and just pop it through. And you'll notice now I've got a nice clean hole through the board. Wiggle it around a little bit to make a little extra room in the board. Then you take your leash, which comes with an anchor like this. You just unscrew the two pieces. This is the male and the female end of the plug. And you take your hand and you just wiggle this in here until you've got it all the way into the board. Then you take the male end of the plug and you put it in the opposite side, and obviously you have to line them up. Sometimes you have to jiggle them around a little bit till you line them up. You'll feel it when it's seated in there nicely. And once it's in there, you can either use a coin like this. This is just a quarter. You insert it into that leash plug and you just screw it down tight, or you can use a giant screwdriver like the one we use here, but a quarter works just fine. And I just crank the leash down, and the idea when you're installing a leash is that you want it to be slightly recessed into the board. At the very least, it should be flush with the board, but ideally you want it slightly recessed. In other words, you want it to kind of be denting into the deck of the board. This one's flush, which is great. I could crank it down a little more to make it recessed, but there you go. That's as simple as it gets, installing a leash.